excited to introduce our next speaker from Fidelity, Julie Casanave. Julie leads the User Experience Design Center of Excellence at Fidelity and is passionate about creating the conditions for teams to solve meaningful human problems at scale. Her talk today is going to focus on how foundational work around customer language is essential to driving change at a large enterprise. And we'll learn a little bit more about how her team aligned on a common taxonomy for these customer-related items and overcame corporate silos along the way. On to you, Julie.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here today. My name is Julie Casanave, and I lead the User Experience Design Center of Excellence at Fidelity Investments. We're talking today about shared language and how we've used it to create a human-first foundation for our entire organization. A little bit about my team. Our design practice has about 200 designers in it who support hundreds of agile teams across 4 lines of business and many dozens of B2B and B2C offerings. And my team focuses on enabling design at scale. So we are the home of our design system, our accessibility group, design operations, and the effort that I'm going to talk about today around shared language. A little bit about Fidelity. As you probably know, Fidelity has been around for more than 70 years. It's privately held with a very large and loyal user base. And clearly, given its history, it's not a digital native company. We've been working hard over the past decade to bring our digital transformation to life. And it's a very big ship to redirect. And my story today is going to talk a little bit about how we're doing this. It's also important to know that Fidelity has a very explicitly stated commitment to the idea of customer obsession. This is an idea that powers a lot of how we talk about our work. But as we all know, that intention can be hard to turn into reality. This talk is a story about the power of a simple infrastructure idea and irrational persistence, and how these 2 ideas have combined to set the stage to help us truly be more customer obsessed. So what do I mean by a simple infrastructure idea? There's a documentary on YouTube on the history of the US interstate highway system, produced by Wendover Productions. It's fascinating. It's just about 15 minutes long. I highly recommend it. And here's how the introduction begins. It's really just 4 lanes, a median, and some on and off ramps. It's no engineering marvel, no precedented undertaking, no massively innovative concept. It's a simple idea. It's not exciting, which is why it often goes so underappreciated. Take the interstates away, though, and you have a weaker nation. You have one with dramatically starker regional divides, one with increased decentralization. Your life would be noticeably different in a reality without the interstates. It's a single collection of roadways with an influence so great it permeates into every American's life. Fidelity's equivalent of this unexciting highway system is a shared language. It's a taxonomy that describes our digital delivery ecosystem. This is a simple idea. It's not an engineering marvel or a massively innovative concept. In fact, it's invisible. And yet it's incredibly powerful because without a shared language, we have stark divides among our business units and our teams. And this impacts our customers because these divides mean that we have many experiences that don't hang together very well as a whole. So I'm going to share the story of why and how we created this shared language and what we encountered along the way. So let's look at the problems. This wall of words is really our problem. People use these words to talk about their work, but they use them very inconsistently and often mean different things by them. Some of these words are used interchangeably to mean the same thing, when arguably there is a difference between a workflow and a job or a journey. Sometimes a single word like product has multiple meanings, and it's not quite clear when someone talks about a product in our organization. Are they talking about a digital product, a financial product, a technical product? Experience is another main offender. When I hear someone say, I'm responsible for the end-to-end experience of something, I'm never quite sure whether they mean, are they responsible for the product strategy of an offering, the design of a journey, the development of a set of capabilities? So you can see why some confusion ensues. And the result of this lack of clarity is that Teams are not aligning their work to a common understanding of who we're serving and what we're building. We have multiple teams solving for the same thing, but in different ways. We have teams stepping on each other's toes when it comes to who's responsible for various outputs and outcomes. And in the end, all of this can result in an unnecessarily slow process of delivering offerings that drive real human value. So there are really two desired outcomes here. One is, can we just reduce the number of words we're using and agree on definitions? And can we do that while we're keeping the customer at the center? We really want to drive this shift from a company-centric view of the world to a customer-centric view of the world. So let's talk a little bit about the process. The story dates back to 2017 when I was leading the design inside our personal investing business, which is where IRAs, brokerage accounts, and other retail accounts are handled. At this time, jobs to be done theory was spreading like wildfire throughout the org. And as you know, jobs theory is a customer-centric approach for driving innovation based on what it is that people are trying to accomplish. At this time, my business unit was organized around 3 personas, and my team was responsible for designing service experiences that worked across all these persona experiences. Things like account opening, profile management, and status tracking. Problem was, these teams working on these persona experiences were siloed, and they weren't really set up to leverage and reuse service interactions from a central team like mine. So what you wound up with was a scenario where you had multiple versions of the same transactions showing up in all these different experiences. And this redundancy was clearly a UX cohesion problem for any customer who's experienced across these persona boundaries. So to get a grip on this, I thought we should catalog all the transactions we had so we could understand the universe of things that customers needed from us, and we could use that hopefully to align our work. So this was the first list of words we created. It's simply a catalog of user tasks. And the goal of this was to drive better UX cohesion. The language, you'll notice, is customer-centric, and it doesn't reference any specific internal capabilities or solutions, so it's stable over time that way. It's also persona agnostic. It's a pretty neutral list. This could just as well be something from Schwab or Vanguard. This was met with a high degree of interest from my colleagues. Most people who saw it said, oh, this is a really useful way to view our world. But most people also said, I don't really know what to do with this. Our teams and our work are not organized this way, so I don't know how to take effective action against this. Fast forward a few months, and in a wholly separate part of the business where I wasn't working, I learned about this list that you're seeing here. This is a list of user journeys that describes our 401k business, our workplace business. Completely unrelated effort, but I looked at this and I realized some interesting things. There were some very similar journeys in here. You know, I see some things in here about signing up with Fidelity, about adding money, about withdrawing money. So similar journeys, similar altitude, phrased in users' words. As it turns out, this list was being used in an operational context to help get a grip on total cost of servicing and ownership. So this was for financial analysis. And this was the first inkling that I had that if we had a common cross-business approach to describing customer tasks or journeys, it would be powerful on multiple dimensions, not just for design, but also for financial reporting. You could also use this to organize how we do our research and organize our insights. This could inform technical architecture. This could inform how we organize our teams. It can inform how we measure our experiences. This could help the entire organization execute on the mission of customer obsession. So at this point, I'm really excited that this idea could drive some meaningful change in the organization. But very quickly, I became daunted. How do I get the enterprise to care about this? I'm sitting over here in a single business unit. How can I amplify the opportunity to people who can help do something valuable with it? So in 2018, I decided let's quantify and visualize the issue and see if that helps get some traction. So we did a survey. We found out how many teams across the enterprise, across all business units, were working on these tasks. And you'll see here, you're looking at the tasks across the top, and then underneath each one of these green boxes represents a team that's working on that particular task. So it looks here that we have 21 teams working on creating a plan to achieve my goals. You could probably imagine that those 21 teams are not necessarily working in a coordinated way on this problem. And suddenly we begin to get a compelling understanding of the cost of this redundancy, not only from a dollar standpoint, but from the potential to have a really fractured experience. This view did inspire a lot of dropped jaws, but it still didn't inspire action. And this is when I realized we might be up against an organizational maturity issue. Maybe we're just not ready to do something with this. So in 2019, we saw an opening. There was an annual leadership forum where we hear about the state of the business. And Kathy Murphy, the president of PI at the time, reminded us of the dual goals of autonomy and alignment that our digital transformation was supposed to allow. And she acknowledged that since we started on this transformation, we'd gotten a lot farther on autonomy than on alignment. So I saw this acknowledgement as an opening. Leadership knew there was an alignment problem, and I believed that a human-centered shared language was at least part of the solution. So maybe our maturity moment was coming. On the heels of that forum in early 2020, I called up Jen Cardello, who heads up our user experience research and insights program. She's an amazing thought leader and partner in the cause to drive clarity. And we teamed up to really dig into how we might elevate the cause of a shared language to our senior leaders. Our hypothesis remained that this common language would accelerate alignment. So now the intentional cross-enterprise work started in earnest. We rounded up every job and journey framework that we could find, anything that would talk about a customer experience from a customer's point of view. And we analyzed them and rendered them into a common format to really understand what the data was in each of these diagrams. And one of the biggest insights that came from this effort was an awareness that we needed multiple tiers to talk about our customer experiences. We had people using the word job and journey interchangeably to mean different things. In some cases, they used those words to describe very high, higher order needs, like we need to help our customers achieve their financial priorities throughout their life. We need to help them invest their securities to grow their wealth. Those were big jobs, big journeys. But then we also had people talking about very transactional things like opening accounts and monitoring transactions. Both really important altitudes, but we were using words interchangeably to describe them. So at this point, we realized we needed a couple of different tiers and we needed words to describe those tiers. And we proposed these two phrases: core jobs to talk about the higher order objectives, and critical tasks to talk about the day-to-day activities that our customers undertake with us in the course of doing business. Quick example of what those things mean. For core jobs, we had big ideas around planning, investing, borrowing, spending. Critical tasks were much more transactional. So we shopped this around for about a year and found a wide range and volume of responses. Interestingly, it struck some as too abstract or too simple or too complicated. We had a few people who said, this is really important and I want to help you. But for the most part, people struggled to know what to do with this. And we really stumbled around trying to figure out who needed to hear this message and how to package it. It wasn't quite taking off the way we had hoped. So we gave it a rest until early this year. Jen and I started getting calls from around the company informing us of a number of unrelated executive-sponsored efforts to create some kind of unifying framework for our business. problem was that none of these efforts knew about the other. And we kept getting these questions about how these various efforts related to jobs and tasks. Are these the same? Are they different? So it was beginning to feel like an endless game of whack-a-mole, and we were trying to like corral everything and connect them to one another. So all these frameworks are popping up, and while in some ways it's been very frustrating, it's also signaled that the organization may finally be ready to tackle this. And because of our history with this thinking, Jen and I were asked by a central enterprise group to corral all these efforts and rationalize them into a single framework. And I'll say this advocacy from the center of the enterprise is probably the biggest lever we've had in driving this shared language agenda. Suddenly and finally, we were at the epicenter of all this and given runway to exercise our design superpowers of human-centeredness, simplification, and facilitation to bring it all together. So let me show you where we are so far. We started with tasks back in 2017. We introduced the notion of jobs when we realized we needed a couple of tiers. And then in the course of the past year, working with this central team and others, we've expanded this to land on a version 1.0 of this taxonomy. And this was the first ever picture that we had that drew a line between what and how we build to who we serve and what they're trying to do. Really satisfying, lovely, elegant depiction. And we realized this was a bit of an academic proposal at this point, and that for this really to be useful in the organization, we needed to pressure test it with delivery teams and see if this construct could be useful to them. So after doing that, this morphed yet a little further into what we have today. This is our current model. And we talk about who and why, we talk about what we offer, what we build, and how we build it. Take a quick peek here at the definitions that we worked on to remove ambiguity. Starting over on the left, which is our sort of strategic opportunity area of the diagram. We have our segments, which are derived from formal market segment initiatives. This is where our personas come from. We have the notion of core functional jobs, or what are the outcomes that our users are looking for? What are the opportunities that we have to meet their needs? And the offerings are the bundled solutions that we offer to our customers in order to meet those needs. What are the things we go to market with? How do we promote them? On the right side of the diagram are the specifics around what we build and to satisfy those needs. We create end-to-end journeys. These are paths that customers choose with Fidelity to serve their needs. Those journeys are comprised of a collection of products or feature sets that customers use in order to complete the journey. And those journeys and products are supported by related capabilities that are managed together to support what we deliver with our jobs and our journeys and products. Quick example of how it works. We have a critical initiative that is intended to tackle a number of things that you see here. These words are used to describe priorities for this initiative. We've got teams focusing on each of these, but it's hard to tell how these things work together as a whole, as a cohesive, focused strategy. If you slot them into the taxonomy, you suddenly have a much more cogent story to tell about this initiative. We have an offering that we're building for segment Z, which has a specific set of unmet needs around saving, investing, and planning. Those needs will be served by a set of journeys that are compiled from a collection of technical products, which are built on a series of platforms. And you can take any of these journeys and decompose them into its constituent parts. So we'll look at onboarding as an example. If we decompose this, we say, all right, there are some major stages of the journey map. There's steps around becoming a customer, funding the account, getting help. There are reusable feature sets or products that get strung together to compose the journey. And then we can map the supporting business capabilities and foundational platforms to those. What this structure does is it gives the teams a place to put everything that they're working on. it helps people understand where in the ecosystem their work lies and what it connects to, both from all these different taxonomy levels. Very quick peek at where this is going. We are looking at who is responsible for each of these areas and what are the responsibilities of each team. Who's a producer, who's a consumer, what's the supply chain relationship between each of these groups? What are the outputs these teams are responsible for creating? What are the outcomes these groups are responsible for? How are they going to be, what are the KPIs that they're going to be held accountable to? So in summary, we have many use cases for this taxonomy, this simple infrastructure, which are now under discussion across the business, from UXD all the way through to personalization, operations, finance, and more. And our increasingly optimistic hope is that, just like the interstate highway system, this simple idea of a shared human-centered taxonomy is poised to help us avert the problems of decentralization and then thereby improve alignment and customer impact in far-reaching ways. Thank you for your time.
Thanks so much, Julie.
Thank you.
That was fantastic. And I just appreciate you sharing your approach and what sounds like was a bit of a long journey and also kind of a lesson in persistence at the same time.
100%. It's been a marathon, and it's been a test of believing in the power of a good idea.
Totally. Yeah. I've seen kind of some comments from folks in the chat, and I think there's this, I think people think this is fantastic, and there's almost a longing look at it saying, wow, I wish we had this. And I'm curious, I know that you mentioned that you kind of had a business partner with this, and you partnered with the head of UX research at Fidelity. I'm curious kind of the importance of that, of having someone else to kind of drive this forward with you, and how that partnership worked.
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's really been central to this whole effort. I'm sorry Jen had to drop for the family emergency, but our relationship was really around understanding what the power of this idea could be, and then working together to figure out how to amplify it in the organization. Having a thought partner to figure that out with has been really critical. And, because between the two of us, we could look across the organization and figure out, okay, if we're not getting traction here, where else can we be looking? And a lot of this story hinges on the relationships we've built over time in the organization to understand who the levers were, who might be able to help us. And it really wasn't until earlier this year that we really found the central advocacy that we needed. So yeah, having a thought partner in getting this all done has been a lifesaver.
Yeah, no, absolutely, so important. And I know that you talked too kind of about this idea of pressure testing and putting this in front of people and gathering feedback. What was the process there and kind of the mechanisms for that feedback?
Well, so the point of doing the pressure testing is really twofold. One is to avoid the ivory tower syndrome of coming up with some kind of central mechanism that is, looks great on paper, but the people who are actually trying to drive delivery, will sort of look at that and say, yeah, sounds good, but it doesn't really help me. So it does two things. It builds advocates within the delivery teams who you want to have adopt, and it also improves it, right? So we set it up as, hey, here's an idea that we think might be helpful to you. Help us break it. Let's look at it closely and see how it works for you and your team, with the full expectation that the exercise is going to yield some changes, and that helps break down adoption barriers.
Sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm sure that process too almost helped you find those levers you talked about before of where these, where those important relationships had to be built and all of that just through the process.
That's right. Yeah.
So I know this is in a V2 state now. How has or how will this be rolled out or made available to teams to actually kind of dive into and start using?
Yeah, it's actually unfolding at a couple different levels simultaneously. We have we have an effort happening at the center of the organization, which is a slower effort with the intention of really making sure we have cross business unit alignment. At this point, it is a proposal that has a lot of awareness, a lot of interest, but we don't have like the official nod that yes, this is what we're doing and everyone's going to use it. So there's an effort at that level to kind of get a governance model in place and figure out how to really drive this through the organization. Parallel to that, in a couple of the different individual business units, we have delivery teams who are very interested in actually using this to analyze their work and their teams and how their work is structured. So they're just kicking the tires and trying it out and seeing how it informs how they think about their work. So the adoption is sort of happening at two levels at once, and we're sort of at the middle trying to make sure that those two levels are staying connected.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm sure that, that iterative testing, it just keeps going, right? And the feedback will continue to come from there. And we have a question, I think that's kind of related to that. This is from Andrew. Is this taxonomy structure used across all business problems or opportunities, effectively a problem-solving template? Or are there certain areas that you found that don't fit the model?
Maybe we'll have another version of this talk in a year and we can answer that question a little bit better. But I think the expectation is that it should help drive a few things. The left side of that diagram should help facilitate conversations around what are the market opportunities we're going after, for whom and why, and how does it fit into our overall suite of products or solution that we're putting into market. We hope that it will help put focus in those conversations. On the right side of the diagram, we hope that it will really improve the way work is getting organized and clarity around roles and responsibilities, and allow everyone to sort of tether their work to each other in a meaningful way.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes total sense. I have a little bit of a two-parter here around how this taxonomy is used and where it faces. Is this internal facing, or are you also renaming / redoing that language for external customers? And then kind of the second part of that is, do financial advisors fit into this too in a way?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. I'm going to take that one first. The genesis of this work started with a view on the end investor, the people whose money we're responsible for. And that's probably going to be the locus of the effort and focus for the near term. But the taxonomy can accommodate and should accommodate all our different customers, right? So we've got individual investors, we've got advisors as an audience, we've also got employers as an audience. So the taxonomy is flexible enough so that we can start to catalog, not only what are all the and customer tasks that we have to support, but what are all the advisor tasks we have to support? What are all the plan sponsor tasks we have to support? So I think those are work streams that will come once we all agree that this is a taxonomy that's worth getting behind. So we hope that can accommodate our advisors. And then yes, at the moment, this is an internal facing exercise. This is really all about getting our internal house in order. But we've made really clear that can only happen if part of it getting our internal house in order is using customer-oriented language in the mix.
Yes, yeah, no, absolutely. Kind of that alignment is so important. So I guess I want to finish up kind of this Q&A with a question about getting here or starting the process to get here, because I think there's probably so many organizations that again would love to do this or love to find a way to get there. And I think the metaphor of the highway system makes so much sense, and it's easy. I think it makes sense because it's easy for us to envision the importance of that. But I'm sure it was difficult, when someone was building that system, to envision the importance before it existed. So do you have any tips for kind of envisioning these tools before they exist?
Yeah, it was really amazing how hard it was to talk about this in the early stages. And there were sort of two types of responses. Either someone said, oh my gosh, like, yes, we need this kind of organizing principle. Or people were like, what does this mean to me? And the people who tended to be in the former category were usually people who were in roles that were more, I'll call them structural roles or architectural roles, right? So folks in our technology and business architecture groups really got it. Folks in our analytics groups really got it. Folks in our operations groups really got it. So the people who were trying to do things across the enterprise got it almost more than the individual delivery teams who are just so focused on their particular goals of getting something delivered. So, you know, I think if I were doing this all over again from the beginning, I would probably spend more time working with those sort of operational architectural groups and building alliances there sooner. Because if you have something that really can affect the enterprise, you know, at that level, and you have that support, that can then make its way towards influencing the delivery side of the house.
Totally. Yeah, no, I mean, you said it from the get-go, right? It's about relationships and building trust with people and understanding kind of their views and kind of bringing it all together. So thank you. And I see a couple questions about Julie's slides. They should be available in the agenda. If you scroll down, you can download and access those there to check those out. But Julie, this has been great. Really appreciate you joining us, and best of luck as you continue to build out the program.
Thanks so much. Take care.